So, the Trump administration has just dropped an absolute bombshell on the entire global pharmaceutical industry. It's a move that's clearly designed to completely reshape a $1.6 trillion trade network. Let's dive in and really unpack what just happened.
At the very heart of this policy is one single staggering number: 100%. We're talking about a potential doubling of the cost for certain imported medicines practically overnight. It's a figure that's absolutely designed to grab your attention and, well, force a reaction.
Okay, so what exactly is being targeted here? Well, the policy applies to imported patented drugs, and this part is crucial. They're active pharmaceutical ingredients, or what are known as APIs. This means the tariff doesn't just hit the finished product on the shelf, it hits the supply chain at multiple points along the way. To really get our heads around this, we're going to break it down into 5 parts. First, we'll look at the proclamation itself, then the official reasoning behind it. After that, we'll get into how the pressure mechanism actually works, the shockwave it's sending around the world, and finally, the industry's pushback and all the risks involved.
All right, first up, the proclamation. This isn't just some threat or a talking point. We're talking about a formal executive action signed on April 2nd, 2026, and it represents a massive, massive intervention in the global drug trade.
The legal tool being used here is something called Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, which actually allows for tariffs on national security grounds. I mean, people are calling this the most consequential government trade intervention in the modern history of the pharmaceutical industry. The stakes really could not be higher.
So that naturally brings us to the why. How is Washington justifying a move that's so drastic? Well, it all comes down to a national security argument.
The administration's core position is that for decades, the U.S. has been offshoring the production of essential medicines, and that, they argue, has left the country incredibly vulnerable in a crisis. So this policy is being framed as a direct answer to that perceived strategic exposure.
And they aren't being vague about it either. The Commerce Department's investigation specifically calls out the key manufacturing hubs you see right here: Ireland, India, and Singapore, as being central to this dependency. Okay, now let's get into the mechanics, because this is so much more than a simple tariff. It's a really complex system that's designed to force companies to make a choice. It's truly an architecture of pressure.
So here's the crucial part, this 3-tiered structure. A drug maker can, do nothing and get hammered with the full 100% tariff. Or they can commit to moving production to the US, onshoring, and that drops the tariff down to 20%. But to get to zero, the holy grail, they have to do 2 things: onshore their manufacturing and agree to what's called a most favored nation pricing deal, which basically limits how much they can charge American consumers.
But, and this is a really big bite, this architecture has some very specific exceptions. The pressure isn't applied equally to everyone, which builds a pretty clear strategic element right into the policy.
And right here, you can see that geopolitical angle in black and white. Key allies and trading partners like the EU, Japan, and Switzerland, they face a much lower 15% rate. The UK gets an even better deal at 10%, and Washington is signaling that could even go to 0 with future deals. So you see, this isn't just about manufacturing, it's about trade alignment.
The policy also has a very deliberate timeline. Large companies get 120 days before the tariffs kick in, and smaller ones get 180. This isn't meant to just shut down medicine imports on day 1. It's a countdown clock, and it's designed to force companies and foreign governments to the negotiating table, and to do it fast. So, what does all this mean for the rest of the world? I mean, this is a US policy, but it is creating a massive shockwave across the entire global supply chain. The ripple effects are just widespread. For allied nations in Europe and Asia, even with those lower rates, there's now this huge new incentive to build factories in the US. For a country like India, which is a major global supplier of APIs, this creates enormous uncertainty. Meanwhile, back in the States, domestic construction and manufacturing firms could be looking at a multi-year boom. But for emerging markets in places like Africa and Southeast Asia, there's a very real risk of price shocks as the cost of basic ingredients gets squeezed. Now, a policy this disruptive was never going to go unchallenged. So let's take a look at the industry's pushback and the very real political risks that are involved here. The administration's case, as we've said, is built entirely on this idea of national security. They're framing this as an absolutely essential move to protect the country's medicine supply.
But the industry, well, they see it very differently. The main lobbying group, Pharma, argues this will do the exact opposite. It'll drive up costs for patients and could jeopardize the very investments the policy is trying to attract in the first place. They also make a point of saying that most imported medicines already come from reliable U.S. allies.
And the opposition isn't just about lawsuits, which, let's be honest, are almost certainly coming. There's a much bigger, more fundamental risk that's baked right into the policy's design. And here it is. The most attractive part of this whole deal, that 0% tariff, is explicitly designed to expire on January 20th, 2029. That's the last day of the presidential term. This ties the policy's long-term survival directly to the next election, creating massive, massive uncertainty for any company that's thinking about making a billion-dollar, decade-long investment in a new U.S. factory.
All of which leaves every major drug maker and every country that exports medicine to America facing the same fundamental question. Do you comply with the new rules? Do you relocate your entire manufacturing strategy? Or do you just brace for impact against a new American trade wall? Ultimately, it's a choice that isn't just about one company's balance sheet or one country's trade policy. It's a decision that will, for years and years to come, define the future of the world's pharmacy,